Okay, welcome back everybody to part 2 of our first week's lecture on installation. So what I'm going to be covering off tonight is what we didn't really get through last time, which was how to get an installation on a Windows machine for Android. So I'll cover off a couple of the slides that we looked at earlier. So you should actually have, if you look on the website now, you should have these slides, which will all be together from what we talked about earlier and what we're going to talk about now. So I think this one's about 88 slides. The one you had was 47 or something. So so what we covered off very briefly before was the differences between cloud and local building. And we talked about what was going to be required for each. So I'm actually going to go through both in some amount of detail. And what I would like you to do is to try and do this yourself. Now, it's not going to be exactly the same. So it could be that what I've done here may not work 100% for you, but just bear in mind that there are a lot of resources on the internet. If you get stuck, it shouldn't be too hard. And I know you can certainly Google how to do the installation, but some of the details are a little bit wrong. So what I've provided you should get you all the way through. If not, make use of the forums, and you will have a lot of other people trying to do the same thing. So I think together you will probably be able to solve any issues if you come across them anyway. All right, so we mentioned that we would need a development environment. We'll need to install all the SDKs, runtimes, emulators. We'll have to install PhoneGap. And I mentioned there's a fair bit of misinformation out there in regards as to what is required. All right. Now we talked about that cloud building already. Okay. Now these are the specific requirements of what you will need. You will need on your machine running node.js. Now this is something that will actually help you download everything else. So this is the first piece of software that you need to put on there, but not hard to do. But this actually has a command window, which is where we'll be executing a lot of stuff. So we won't be using the normal command window. We'll actually be using the node one. You'll need Eclipse, which is the development environment. You'll need the Android SDK. We'll need something called Apache ANT, and we'll need the Java development kit. Okay, now the Android SDK will actually ship with Eclipse if you get the right version of it. It's quite important here. You can save yourself a lot of time if you get the correct version of Eclipse, which is already pre-set up for doing Android development. Eclipse is an editor that you can use for lots of different things. It's not necessarily just for doing Android. So if you want to configure it for Android, you can either do it manually yourself, or you could just download a copy that's already done for you. So that certainly makes it much easier. All right, so detailed instructions. Now, these are the instructions that are actually on the net. You can click on those. Now this is where I, first of all, kind of got my information when I did the build. I went through part 1 here and found it didn't work, and then was trying to struggle a bit to work out what was going on. I found some good resources in part 2, which actually kind of referred to part 1 and said where that had gone wrong. So these two resources here are certainly worth looking at, but what I have done is really taken bits of both and stepped you through and shown screenshots. So what the slides are that I'm following through with now are effectively everything that's contained in part 1 and part 2, but in a sort of a fairly logical manner, one after the other, with some photos to go with it. All right, so the first thing you need to do is download node.js. That link there that's on there will actually take you to the download link where you can grab it. As it said, this is just a little piece of software which you can use for then installing other pieces of software, really. It's all you really need to know about. It's not that important. Okay, so the next thing then we need to do is download Eclipse. So there's the link. Now that one there is Eclipse, including the Android, all the Android developer libraries and the SDK for it, all in there. So you'll see that link. That should be the screen that comes up when you click on that. So make sure you grab that. Okay, following on from there, you'll come up with another screen. Now, it's very important here that you that you actually grab the correct one. So know whether you're running on a 32-bit or a 64-bit operating system. So if you get the wrong one here, it probably won't work. So you'll try and run it and it'll say that it doesn't work for your particular installation of operating system. But more importantly, well, actually just as importantly, it's not really more importantly, make sure that the other pieces of software that you download, if you're selecting 32-bit, that you select 32-bit all the way through to make sure they're the same. Because what can actually happen is that you can download the 64-bit version of Java and the 32-bit version of Android, and they're just not going to work together. You need to make sure that they're consistent. Okay, so now that'll take quite a long time to download. I have a feeling it's about 300 or 400 meg from memory, so to grab all of that. So get that. Now, note where you're going to put it. So when you get Eclipse, you can actually unpack it all and install it, and it's going to be put into a specific directory. You need to know where this is going to be, and you can choose that. So as it says here, you can save it into an appropriate location, such as your development directory if you want to do that. You can put it pretty much anywhere, it doesn't really matter. But just make sure that you know where that is, because we need to refer to that later. We're going to be manually setting up some paths in our environment variables. So we need to know where it is that Eclipse is going to go. So in my case, I have done pretty much this. I've got a development folder and I've put it all in under there. All right, now the next thing you need after that is the Java Development Kit. Now this is not the Java Runtime. You might have come across the Java Runtime. I mentioned this in our previous recording, that the Java Runtime is something that's used by browsers and other bits and pieces. That's most commonly what is installed. This is actually the Java Development Kit, and that link there will take you to it. To grab it, make sure you get this, or the most recent copy, depending on how far after it is that you're watching this video from when I've recorded it. But get the most recent copy, download it there, JDK, that's what we want to do. Okay, and then just make a note of where it is it's going to be installed to. Again, you need to know where this is going. Note the difference between C program files x86 and C program files. So it could be that you might have both. Okay, so if you're running a 64-bit operating system, you may actually have 32-bit applications. They'll be sitting in a different folder. So just don't get confused about that as to where it's actually being installed. All right. Again, make sure that when you download this that you get the correct version for your operating system. So what have we got here? We've got Windows x86 and Windows x64. So make sure that you know which one it is that you're going to run it on and download the appropriate one for your operating system. Okay, then we need this thing called Apache ANT. Probably doesn't really matter too much what this is. This is just part of one of the compiling tools that's required by PhoneGap to be installed and in your path. The one you want here is this one here. So just grab the zip file for that, download it. You can just click on that link there, unzip it, and put it somewhere where you remember. Okay, now after you've downloaded all the stuff, so let's just quickly recap on that. Apache ANT, JDK, Eclipse, and Node.js. Those are the 1, 2, 3, 4 things that you need. Okay, so what you want to do next is run Node.js. Now, it may not be sitting into your program folder. You may actually have to do a search for it. Just type Node.js into the search bar, your start menu, and it should pop up. You'll see the command prompt there. Click on it, and it runs up like this. It just looks like a normal command window. Now, the first thing we want to do here is install PhoneGap, and the command to do that is npm, you can see it there, space install -g PhoneGap. And what that's going to do is actually, this is going to go off and retrieve all the PhoneGap source code from the server where it's being held and download it and install it all for you. So you'll see all this kind of stuff down here working away, if that's worked for you. So it'll just go and a whole bunch of commands and information will appear underneath it. All right. Now, I'm going to go through this in detail. This is a screenshot out of that part 1 of the installation details that I gave before, but I'm going to talk through this in more detail, but just as a summary so that you've got it all in one spot. What we're going to do now is with all these pieces of software that we've downloaded and installed, we need to make sure that they are in our path. The reason for this is that with using PhoneGap, it's going to make use of all these bits of software. Otherwise, we wouldn't have downloaded them. But it won't be able to find them unless it can issue the command within its batch files and find them. So in order for it to be able to do that, we actually have to have environment variables that are running so that when it just issues a command of ADT or something, or ANT or one of those commands that are there, that it will actually be able to find it. So this takes us through the exact process of what we need to do. So you can read that. If that all makes sense, that's fine. But I'll step you through that now. So it does mention in here, from the desktop, right-click My Computer and click Properties. You may not have My Computer actually on your desktop. So what you can do in that case is go here. If you're running Windows 8 or something, this PC, right-click on it, go down here to Properties. Okay, now from that, then you'll see this will pop up some further information here. You want to go to Advanced System Settings for that. Okay, and from there, see, this is where we are here now, Advanced. You want Environment Variables. Okay, so right-click on your PC, Properties, Advanced System Settings, Environment Variables. Okay, now when you click on that, that will then pop up this window over here. Now this is where we can set up all our various environment variables. Now you'll notice that we've got a couple here set already. We've got Ant Home and Java Home, which you will need to do. So that's referenced in this here. It'll talk about it. Ant Home, see that? And Java Home. So it talks about how to do it. And then also we need to include in that the information for adding to our paths where the Android SDK is going to be. So remember when I mentioned to you before that you would need to know where you had actually installed Eclipse? Well, this is where that will be. So you'll see Android SDK Windows there, and then Android SDK Windows Tools, Platform Tools and Tools. Okay, so if you go in here in Path, if you double click on Path there, we can edit this and we can add those in. Okay, so we add in the paths that are important into this. Now notice that we're also adding in these additional environment variables, Java Home and Ant Home. They have to be set first. Now it's also important, we're separating each of these paths with a semicolon. Now they can't have a space between them. If they've got a space between that and the semicolon, it's actually not going to be recognized. Okay, so we need to set that up. Now this Ant Home, this may be different. I don't know where you've installed that. So when you double click and install that, make sure you know where that is. The same thing with this one, Java Home. Make sure that you know where that's going to and set that up as well. So this is just a matter of just going new and typing those in. Okay, and then path, we need to then add those into the path as well. So Java Home /bin, /bin. Now, in addition, those are not the only two you do. You will also have to do these ones as well. Okay, so the one for the Android SDK, for both platform tools and tools. Okay, so you end up doing a few of these. Okay, so just read through this, make sure that makes sense, and then the specifics of where it's all located are in these screens there. Okay, now once you've done that, you can check to make sure that this actually works, to make sure that your paths are right. Now, if you go into node.js, that command prompt that we've already got opened, and just type any of these commands, if they've been set up properly and the paths are correct, then when you run each of these commands, just by typing them and hitting return, you're going to get some data afterwards. If they haven't been set up correctly, then you're going to get something like unknown file or command name, because it's just not going to understand what it is that you're talking about. Okay, so type each of these one by one, and these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commands. One of them, in this case Android, this is actually going to pop up an application. You can close it as soon as it's done, but the rest of these are all command line based. So this is an easy way to make sure that what you've actually done has worked. Now, important. I wish I could just type important up here on the screen just so you can see it if you're racing through it and not following everything I'm saying. But you will, if you already have a command prompt window open, you'll need to close it and reopen it in order for those paths to activate. So the information that you've set up in here, where you've created these new environment variables and made adjustments to the path, these won't actually become operational until you have a new command window. Okay, so your existing command window from node.js, close that down, reopen it again, and then fire up these after you've made those changes. And if you've got all that working, that's a lot of the hard stuff kind of already done for you. All right, so what we've also done as well by running Eclipse, but by getting the Eclipse version that I mentioned here, wherever it is, this one here, this saves us a lot of time because these two would otherwise have to be downloaded separately. So don't get ahead of yourself and go and download the Eclipse version that doesn't have this linked in, because otherwise you're going to have to go and download the Android developer kit and the SDK and all that sort of stuff as well, and then try and install that into Eclipse, and that's a lot of work. Okay, so at least get the one that's already working. Okay, so we've gone through all of that. Now, the next thing we can do is we can create a PhoneGap project. So note that this is slightly different from what part one says. Okay, so I think part one's got a few issues that don't work. This should address that. The process that we're going to go about to make this work, first of all, to create a PhoneGap project, and that will generate a whole bunch of files and a nice file structure for us. Then what we'll do is we'll add a platform to it. So what that will do is that we're going to say this particular project that we've built, we now want it to support Android, for instance. And so we specifically issue a command that adds Android specific code, I suppose, into that project, so it will work with that. And you can do that with multiple platforms. From there, we then build it, and then we launch the simulator from there, and then we deploy it to the simulator. Okay, so create the project, add the platform that we want that project to support, do a build on it to create an executable effectively. We then launch the simulator, and then we push that code to that simulator. Okay, so I'll talk you through and show you how this is going to work. All right, now this looks like a wall of text, but up here you can see if you just type PhoneGap help in here. So now I've got my little project here that I've created called new test in here. If you type PhoneGap help, it will give you a list of all the functions that are there, and then you can just type help and then the name of the function, just like any other DOS kind of command, and you'll see exactly how it all works. So what it is that it's going to do. So this tells you here, these are our various options of what we can do when we do a create. And in this case, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create one, PhoneGap create, and then I'm going to give it a name and a bit of a reference, way that I'm going to refer to it, I suppose. So PhoneGap create, the place where you want it to be created, a name and a reference there. So don't worry about some of this stuff, missing library, that kind of thing. It'll download it all for you, or make it all nice and work. And the end result will be that you get something like this. If you do a dir, I know I'm issuing DOS commands here, going back a little while, but hopefully you know some of these commands. And you'll see that this is being created for us. So it basically creates all this entire structure. So this was an empty folder before. Okay. Now you actually, one thing I should mention is that you can get it to generate your folder for you as well. You don't have to have already created it. But to have a bit of a play around with there, you can see all the various options that you've got there. So this one here where it says com.example.app it refers to the package name that's going to be when we upload it. It's required for uploading to a store, and whereas this is the actual name of it that it's going to appear in human readable format. Okay, so we have a look in here. This is the www directory, and you can see that this is created for us basically a hello world, very simple application. So our application that we're going to be pushing to the devices tonight is very simple. In fact, we're not even going to do any coding at all. All we're going to do is get it working and on there. So we're using the default that is created for us when we do a create. Okay, so when we do a PhoneGap create, it sets up a whole bunch of stuff and just says, here's a little PhoneGap app. So we're quite happy with that at this point. That's all we really want to do. So you can see here we have created that. I've changed into the www directory, had a look at it. You can see we've got a CSS folder here. We've got an icon, which is associated with the app. We've got an image directory. We've got a JavaScript directory, resources directory. This is another page here, which has got its own directory for content for that one there, and index.html. So it just looks like a piece of normal website. In fact, it is a normal website. Now, you can actually browse to it if you want to. So in my case here we go. I've opened it up just right where it is in a browser, and you can see this is a normal website. Nothing too special about it at all. Now, this is a way that you can test your applications. Then they're not going to make use of the PhoneGap API in terms of hardware or anything like that with accessing mobile specific hardware and sensors, but you can certainly step through your HTML, make sure that it all works and all looks correct. So this is one way, I suppose, of debugging. You can get all your basic look and feel and GUI and everything working nicely and run it in a browser. And then when you want to add in the specific mobile features, then you can deploy it to an emulator or you can deploy it to an actual device. Okay, but at least this is an interim point. We can see that that works. We've got index.html. It's working in a browser, so we know that we've got some kind of content there. All right, next step. We are now going to tell PhoneGap that this particular project that we've got, we want to add a platform to it. So here we can see we're sitting within new test, which was just the name of where my project is. We go PhoneGap install and Android. Now you can try a number of ones. You can type Windows, you can type iOS. In fact, you can go PhoneGap install help, and it'll tell you the names of the ones that we can do there. So it's going to go off and do all this. Now, it's really important to note here, it's detecting the Android SDK environment, blah, 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 off it goes. Throw E. We've got an error here. Okay, have a look here. Error, please install Android target Android 19. Now, what's happened is that we don't actually have the correct Android target set up within the SDK. So we need to get that installed. So it's the Eclipse version that's come with Android and all the settings and everything are basically set to their defaults, and they're not the ones that are required for PhoneGap to work out of the box. So we're going to have to modify that, and we're going to have to actually download those and install those in order to make them work. Now, it actually tells you how to do it. It says, hint, run Android from your command line to open the SDK manager, which is exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to type Android in there. And then, okay, so here's just going through what I've said. We may get an error, see the previous slide, which requires us to install the Android SDK information for the one mentioned in the error. So to do that, we fire up Eclipse, we select the SDK manager, and we install it. So now that's one way of doing it, or we could just go directly to that SDK manager, as it says here, by just running Android. Okay, so in my case, what I've done here is I have fired up Eclipse and I have called the SDK manager. The SDK manager is this button here. It's a little robot with the down arrow. Now we can see here that, and if I was able to scroll down, this is a, whoops, sorry. This is a screenshot, so we can't see everything that's in there, but we find everything that says 19. So this one is already installed, and I've gone and I've ticked this one here for 19, which relates to 4.4.2. And the first time I did this, I actually didn't select enough. If I'd scrolled down further, I would have seen more instances of anything relating to API 19. So it might be that you do this once, you think you've got it all, you run it again, and it says, no, still not done. So you've got to install some more. So this will go through now. Again, this might take a while. It has to download a lot of stuff here. So it might be 10 minutes or so of installation to get this right. After you've done that and you say install 9 packages, you're going to get this screen here. You say accept license, and it'll tell you all the things that it's doing, grabbing all those files. Then we click on install there, and we give it another go. And now let me just check this command. PhoneGap install Android is the same, I believe, as going Cordova platform and Android. So this is one of those times where you can interchange them between the two. So just if one doesn't work, you can try the other one. I know it sounds a little bit vague, but it's just one of those curious things. This one worked for me. So yeah, Cordova and PhoneGap can be used interchangeably. To be honest, I can't remember why I did it this way and not the other way. It was a while ago, but you can certainly try that as well. It's the same command. So gives it another go, tries to create an Android project, and it will work. So what we're looking for here is project successfully created. And you can see the Android target here is Android 19. Okay, and we know that we've got that installed if we've selected everything that was related to 19. Now, as I mentioned, I had to do this a couple of times because I missed some the first time around, and had to go back in here, and I found there was some more. Okay, so once we've done that, we can do a build, and building it, we will end up, it should all go through here, and we'll get a success somewhere along the line. Yes, blah, blah, blah. Build successful. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so this will have actually built us our PhoneGap project, linking and everything from Android at the time. And we should now have an APK. All right. Now, the APK file is what you can put straight on to a device. If you have an Android device and you're familiar with how to deploy APKs, you can try and just get that straight on to your device at that point. But to get it into the emulator requires a little bit more work. So sometimes at this point you will run into issues and you have to do a clean build and a couple of other things within Eclipse to make this work. This link here will tell you how to do that if you run into those issues. Okay, now it is a little bit specific to whatever it is that you're doing at the time, so there can be a few little oddities going on there. I think the first time I ran it, I had to do it. The second installation I did, it was perfectly fine. I have no idea. I don't think I did anything different. So, so that link's there just if you run into any issues. So what we want to do now is we've got a legitimate Android project. We want to load it into Eclipse as a project. So what we do here is we create a new project. It says here, launch Eclipse. We select the menu item, new project here. And then we're going to pull this in from existing code. We're not creating an entirely new project off by itself. This is the equivalent of basically open project, but it's a little bit different under Eclipse. So in this case, we're calling it new project and Android project from existing code. Click on next, select the folder of where it is. The folder should be that one that you've created. In my case, it was new test. Now, if you've done it correctly, you will see these projects appear in here. So you browse to it, you find it, and it will automatically find those. If you haven't set it up right, or if you haven't built it, these projects are not going to appear in here, and they'll be blank. Okay, so it's quite important that you get all this stuff right first, okay, before you get to here, because it won't recognize it as a legitimate Android project. Okay, So presuming that works, we go to the next thing and we try and deploy it to the simulator. Now, straight out of the box, Eclipse, even with all the stuff configured, doesn't actually have simulators ready to go. It has a whole library of potential simulators, but none set up for projects. So we need to get those configured. So I'll show you how to do that. Now, to do this, you fire up the Android Virtual Device Manager, which is the AVD Manager. That is this little button here, which is the little robot guy sitting inside a phone, or the Android, I should say, sitting inside the phone. Click on that. Now, this will give us, now I can't scroll down. I think I'm actually in the development environment. I'm not. So this will give us a whole bunch of device definitions. And if you scroll down, you'll find some, I mean, there's televisions like you see here, and then there's everything, and there's watches, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. Find something that looks vaguely like a phone or a tablet. And from that, then we can create the actual virtual device. So these are the ones to work from. Okay, so what we're doing is create device. Here we select one, create device. Okay, now this won't let you click on OK, which you can't see anyway, until you select the skin and the CPU. These haven't been selected yet, so select your CPU and your skin. Again, I don't think it matters too much which CPU you use. Yeah, I'm not 100% on that myself. I think I select the Atom one, I think, on that one, and then just select that skin for it. It's really just the look and feel that it's going to use for the simulator. Okay, we do that, and then we should now have, if we click over here back in our virtual device manager, you'll see our list of virtual devices. So the device definitions are all the ones we've possibly got to choose from, and then we create sort of instances of those which then appear over here. Okay, so we've got a Galaxy Nexus here and a generic kind of one over here. All right, now these are basically usable emulators that we're able to make use of. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to actually launch the simulator and then run the app. So we click on Start there. Okay, so you'll see if we'd picked one of these, say for this one, then start would be ungrayed out, whatever the opposite of grayed out is, and click on Start. That will then do this. It'll say Starting Android Emulator, and then once that's running, then we can click on Run here, this project, and it will push it directly to that emulator. Okay, because this is running. Now, if you've used iOS before, if you've done development in Xcode, you're quite used to the emulator there for the iPhone booting up and being available to you straight away. The ones in Android are very slow in comparison. They can take a couple of minutes to boot. So a little bit like the phone, effectively. So if you think it's not working, just give it a little bit longer, and then eventually, you're going to see the screen come up, and it'll look like the home page of a phone. So the main front screen. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. As it says here, yep, it could take a while to start up. If you're worried, watch the console. So the console is, I don't think I've got a screenshot of it, but it's just down the bottom of, where are we? I think it's covered most of the time. Yeah, so I can't show you. But down the bottom of the screen here. In fact, I think that's it, just there. All right, and so you can see it'll be telling you what it's up to, installing the APK directly onto the simulator. Now, this is what you should end up with depending on what your simulator is. And you will see, what you will actually see is that will pop up. And that shows that the app is actually running. If you are used to an Android device, you can use it just like, press these buttons, do everything you like with Android, and it will react accordingly. If you go back to home, you'll now see that the app is installed. This is our Hello World app that's sitting there on the phone. Okay, and then when you run it, that's what's going to appear. Device is ready, PhoneGap. So our first working application. So I'm very proud that I've got this far with my screenshots. so works perfectly when I'm showing it in a PowerPoint presentation. But I do assure you, I have actually screenshotted this as I was doing it. So have confidence, you can make it work. But as I say, when I first tried to do this myself, this took a ridiculously long period of time. So I mean, you need to allow time for things to download and make sure you got your configuration right and everything as well. But keep in mind that most of the stuff, once you've got it done once, it's all set up. So you don't need to do any of this download stuff again. Once you've configured your emulators, they're all going to work every time, that kind of thing. All right, so that's the process for setting up a local project and running it from Eclipse, where you can do debugging and you can do all that sort of stuff. Okay, so that's your local environment. A lot of work. Okay, now I'm hoping that it hasn't put you off doing PhoneGap, because it is a bit of work to get set up. But I mean, Android is probably the worst of the lot. It's much easier on other platforms to get going. But if you can get yourself through that, then that's 90% of all the pain experienced already. So now that we've done the nasty part, let's have a look at the easy way. There is an easier way, and as I've said here, Adobe have simplified this with cloud building, basically because of the pain. Now, bear in mind that we've only just built for one platform. We may want to build for other platforms as well, considering this is sort of multi-platform mobile development. So there are options and there are reasons why you do one against the other. We've talked about this a bit already. Local testing versus cloud compile download installation. Cloud compiling is a pain because you've got to upload your source code. All very well if it's small, but I mean, if you've got a large project, I mean, it could take ages to upload the thing, and then it's got to compile, and it's a long time. You don't really want to be debugging that way, so it's not ideal. I would suggest that you do have a local installation that you use at least for one platform, and then maybe use cloud deployment for all the other platforms. But I'm going to show you the Adobe one because it is really quite brilliant, and it's simplified and it's wonderful to be honest, and I think you're going to like it. I was very impressed with it. Okay, so let's start again. Roll it all the way back again. How do we do cloud deployment? Well, let's go back. I'm going to go back prior to anything that we have installed. Okay, so we're going to go and assume that nothing's here. So we do npm install -g PhoneGap. So Node.js obviously is installed. We've got that. Now, the great thing about the Adobe Cloud system is it doesn't rely on having any SDKs at all. So we don't really need any of this other stuff that we've had to go through with Java and all that kind of stuff. So we do our installation of PhoneGap, which is all very nice. We then create here a new folder for our little app. And so this is going to create, now this is another example. If you compare it to the commands I typed before, you can also use this one. So there's a few different ways to do it. So in this case, this will actually create us our folder if it doesn't exist and put everything into it. So here we've got new test 2 as opposed to new test 1 that we had before. Okay, so we don't need the SDKs. Now, we also don't need to add the platform in, because remember when we were typing all these commands before to add the Android platform, that's because we were going to be building locally and emulating Android locally. Well, we don't care about that because we're not going to be doing anything locally at all. We're not actually been working with any platforms. All the platform code is dealt with in the cloud area. So all we can care about at this point is just our HTML and the files that are relating to it. Okay, the downfall of this, of course, is that we can't emulate anything locally. So we're a bit stuck if we wanted to actually do debugging. However, we could run it in a browser, just like what we did before, but we just can't emulate all those advanced features. All right, so if we have a look at this in the Windows browser as opposed to looking at it in a command window, this is what we have got sitting there at the moment. Now, all we really need as far as the Adobe Cloud system is concerned, the cloud build, are these two files here. We need the www folder and we need config.xml. So you need to move the config.xml into www and then we'll zip up that folder. Okay, So this is what you should have. We end up with this. This is inside www. We now have config.xml sitting inside there, and we zip up that folder, and there is the file there. Okay, now notice this config file. We're going to be looking at config a bit more. Now, I've tried to keep away from really getting into any coding or programming at this point, and we're saving that for next week. But the config file is what gives the name of the app, okay, and descriptions and the sort of stuff it sets up. A lot of information, yeah, all sorts of stuff is in there. So you can have a look through it and have a look. It's the icons and it's all kind of things in there. So that's where it's pulling a lot of its information for setup from. Okay, so what we do is we open our browser, we go to build.phonegap.com. Now, as I mentioned, it does require an Adobe account. I'm not sure, to be honest, what the cost is because I've had an Adobe account for a while, and I was trying to dig up to see whether you can have an account without actually having any software, and I think you can, but I'm not sure. So I will have to leave that up to you. If you've already got an Adobe account, then that's no problem. You can just use that. Otherwise, you may have to create one, and I'm not certain of the cost. It won't be much though. Okay. So that's what we do there. We install that. This is the URL. This is build.phonegap.com. And you can see here, this is a list of our apps, which in this case is empty. We do not have any apps. It can pull from a Git repository, which I'm not really going to talk about at this point, basically source control. But we want to upload a zip file. So we just click on that, and then we upload our file. Once it's uploaded, it reads the config file, has a look, and says, here we go. This is our Hello World application, and there's the description of it there. Says who owns it, and then all you need to do is press ready to build. Okay, this goes off. Now, it defaults to 3 platforms, and these will go blue when they are completed, when the build's actually complete. So they'll be grey as they're being built. When they're completed, you'll see them like that. These are buttons. If you click on these buttons, you can actually download the built application, or you can click on Hello World and you can see more information about your app. Okay, so once this is done, we have a couple of options. Once this is built, we can download each of these files and put them on our device. So this one's the IPA here for iOS. This is the APK for Android. So you could deploy them directly if you knew how to install onto your device, or if you know how to do an install of an IPA file onto an iOS device. It's actually not that easy to do unless you know what you're doing and you've done a fair bit of mobile development in the past to get an idea. Android users may be used to APKs, how to get them on, but it can still be a little bit of a pain to do. So there is an easier way. So instead of actually just downloading them, what you can do is once it's built, you can see that this is the QR code here. Now this may even scan as I'm looking at it now. I'll just try it. I've got a scanner on my phone. You could try this. It may work for you. I haven't tried it from anything but my own phone here, but I've got a little reader. I'm going to try it right now. And that is coming up. You won't see, okay, now you'll see the next screen. Hang on, let's have, this is the screen that you'll see come up here. And I'll say, would like to install Hello World. Okay, now you can click on install, and that should work for you, I think. I don't see why it wouldn't. And then you'll end up with that PhoneGap on there. Okay, so you can give that a go. But the whole point of this is to actually get you to do it, not to install my particular app. But that's the process. So it's really, really nice. That's going to work if you've got a QR reader on any device, and it'll pick the appropriate one. So that's just right now, and when I've scanned the QR code off the PowerPoint presentation, that has actually installed the app onto my iOS device right this second. So you might find that will work for you as well. Okay, so if you want to distribute as well, now we're not really going to cover that tonight, but you can also get this stuff onto the store. Now you're going to require keys in order to do that. So this means having a developer account here to do that. And the same with this, you'll need an Android Google one as well in order to get that. So here you go. You can see all the files: APK, IPA, XAP, and you can download those. But yeah, if you attach the key to it and then do a rebuild, then you can upload that directly into the store. So, I mean, you may, if you haven't done software development for apps in the past, you probably still think this is quite complicated. I can assure you this is a beautiful thing. So in comparison to what you really have had to do in the past, it's fantastic. So to think that we've now got here 3 different platforms all going to run is just amazing. And one of the great things about PhoneGap is just to suddenly have this working across multiple platforms and ready for the store. All right, so this should be your end result. As we've seen, it'll first say, would you like to install? And then you will have that sitting there. Now, my homework for you was to get you to take a selfie and show the app running on your phone and upload it. You could put that up into the forums. Now, you still may do that. Now, what I don't want you to do is just take a photo of my QR code and install it on your phone, because that's kind of not really the idea of this. If you're going to be hanging around for the next 3 weeks or so as we go through PhoneGap, I would advise you strongly to go through this process of everything I've done over the past few minutes here to get it going, because unless you do, we're not really going to be able to go to that next level and do all the PhoneGap stuff that we need to do. So if you want to build some apps, and take advantage of all that, you're going to have to do some of this stuff. Now, you don't necessarily need to do everything with Android. You could just get it going with the second half. It will just mean debugging is a little bit more difficult, but you can get all the HTML debugging done because you can just run in the browser, but you just won't be able to get all the hardware features when you're running in the browser. If you really want to be able to get the features of the hardware, you're either going to have a full installation of something like Eclipse, or you're going to have to do the hardware testing by uploading to the cloud and deploying to your device. All right. Well, oh, there we go. No, that's, I think, everything we've got there for tonight. So quite a bit there that we've talked through. I will get this uploaded for you. Feel free to go on the forums. Now, my availability during the week is a little bit limited because I have a development job myself, so I'm not always available on the forums, but I will attempt to have a look, and if there's something I can answer quickly, I'll try and help out. But we'll be getting right into development next week. So thanks very much for listening, and look forward to seeing you all next week.